Life is filled with what-ifs. What if Del Toro directed The Hobbit? What if the Tsar was halfway competent in World War I? What if I didn't blow out my Achilles tendon in high school, causing me to get laughed out of the military recruiter back in the early 90s? What if Gary won the TSR Civil War? What if they cast Jared Harris instead of Tommy Wiseau in The Room? And what if the Red Steel setting was much more straightforward than a complicated triple curse involving multiple immortals, wars, and geographical divisions, and replaced with the concept of a valuable but poisonous metal that has created an economy centered around extracting it? That's what Bruce Hurd had in mind with his version of the setting in Dragon magazine, as this part of the Princess Ark series was left out of Champions of Mystara, and thus retconned by the Red Steel box set. This version is not well known. It's time to change that. I'm Mr. Welch, welcome to Mystara, and let's see what's behind door number 2. The Slagovich Affair article appeared in Dragon 171 and was chapter 18 of the Princess Ark saga. It wholly retconned Module X9, the Savage Coast, out of existence in the timeline, replacing the Savage Baronies and similar nations introduced in subsequent Dragon articles. These entries gave us the region's current countries, only with minor differences, specifically no firearms. The other significant change was how Cinnabril was created and formed. Rather than a magical curse that poisons the land, the mineral cinnabar is a naturally occurring substance that's highly toxic and super valuable. You still need Cinnabril to keep away the worst aspects of the toxic mineral, but there are no lingering curses to remove. You take the treatment and you don't suffer the ailments, and no mutations either. Pretty straightforward. Cinnabar, full name Seed of Cinnabar, is a magical metal found only in the Savage Coast, specifically in the region called the Savage Baronies. It's common in the region, there's no need to mine for it. The Savage Coast is the only place you can find it. It's about as common as clay. It is everywhere. People born in the region are automatically afflicted with cinnabar poisoning. Those who move to the area will start to suffer its effects in a matter of weeks, depending on their constitution score. There's no avoiding it, but it's not a curse. It's due to the fact you're living in a fantasy lead mine where it's even in the air you breathe. The effects of cinnabar poisoning do not cause mutations like red steel, but instead cloud the mind and does wonders for your cough. People who suffer from it have their lifespans reduced by 20%, and worse, their wisdom and intelligence scores are capped at 3d4, determined randomly for each attribute. This also caps your maximum spell level available at your relevant stat, -9. This place wreaks havoc on spellcasters, as you can imagine. But that's the extent of the ailments. It's magical lead poisoning. It decreases your lifespan, makes you dumber, and crimps your decision-making. Removing yourself from the region reverses the neural decay, but not the reduction of the lifespan. That can't be cured naturally. You're going to need spells or Cinnabril. Not every region of the Savage Baronies are covered with cinnabar. Lands contaminated with it are notable because of the red tint that seems to be on everything. Plants, rocks, people. If cinnabar can be absorbed, inhaled, or otherwise ingested, that thing will turn red. But unlike red steel, Bruce's Savage Coast has clearly delineated borders of the areas home to cinnabar deposits. There is no wild speculation based on poorly illustrated maps that use a single color to illustrate contaminated areas, or all the areas. There's no disagreements on the spread of the mineral from the different sources, no charts disagreeing on the effects, and no continuity problems between all the articles. Are we even sure this belongs in Mystara? If you want to mine for the minerals that turn into red steel, you have to go into the clearly marked regions that will be detrimental to your health, and it's not going to be a surprise. The Savage Baronies have areas filled with cinnabar and cinnabril, and these sections are easy to identify. The people entering them are doing that of their own free will, or they're being forced to. There is no mistaking a cinnabar deposit. And of course, there has to be Cinnabril if we're talking about the Savage Coast. Only now it's a little better explained. Cinnabril is cinnabar that has been changed by pressure under the ground into a dark red mineral with the same texture as lead, the color being the dead giveaway. This has curative properties for those affected by cinnabar, as putting it against your skin if you're suffering from exposure reverses the neural decay, and it restores your original lifespan. There are always drawbacks. First, Cinnabril is toxic if exposed to someone who isn't under the effects of cinnabar poisoning, as in it costs you a point of constitution a week if you keep it exposed to your skin. Also, skin exposure causes it to decay or at least lose its properties. Cinnabril's color fades from bright red to dull red. The metal does decay slowly. A coin-sized piece is depleted in about 50 weeks. All Cinnabril in contact with skin, or any living organism, depletes simultaneously. Unlike red steel, it doesn't lose its properties one at a time. Most people using Cinnabril have it crafted into a necklace or bracelet for maximum exposure. While going without Cinnabril is terrible if you're affected by cinnabar, the effects only reverse after a week of going without it. The actual value of Cinnabril comes when it's depleted, as that turns it dull red, but allows it to be used to create the alloy known as red steel. This is not inherently magical like the boxed set version, but it's also not toxic. It reduces the weight of any metal object by half, but also triples the value. Because non-depleted cinnabril is harmful to anyone outside the cinnabar-covered region of the Savage Coast, it has little value in other lands. Depleted cinnabril, on the other hand, is highly valuable, worth about the same as silver in the known world. Finding people willing to sell you depleted cinnabril is the real challenge. Because of the value of cinnabril on the Savage Coast, they put less value on other precious metals. Only gold and platinum are accepted at face value, and silver is alloyed with cinnabril to create the coins of the land. The bright is 10% undiluted cinnabril, the rest being silver. The coin is only permitted to be owned by nobles or royalty, and each coin is worth 5 electrum. The fair is a 2% cinnabril silver alloy, and it's worth about 5 silver pieces. A dim is a depleted bright. It's worth a single silver piece. A dark is a depleted fair, and it's worth a copper piece. These coins are either hoarded away or spent quickly, as a bright depletes in 5 weeks and a fair in only 1. Because of this, coins are customarily handled only with gloves. The coins are rarely used to reverse the effects of cinnabar because of how quickly they deplete. This usually only happens in the poorest regions, which only makes matters worse as they quickly destroy their money supply. Cinnabril is the most commonly mined mineral on the Savage Coast for obvious reasons. In Bruce's versions, these areas are found on the outskirts of the baronies, with their towns and cities located safely some distance from the reddened ground. Many of these areas are found outside the borders of the baronies, in badlands infested with humanoids or bandits who prey on the miners. This can cause clashes between the nations over the more prosperous mines in the regions between the baronies. There is no small amount of money to be made mining cinnabril or guarding the mines. Depleted cinnabril can be found in areas with significant amounts of animal or plant life, as they also deplete cinnabril deposits like people wearing the amulets. These areas are perfect for mining, though they are often quickly stripped of all surface minerals and the animals or plants are killed or driven off, meaning the minerals in the region will not be coming back in the immediate future. These sites are prime spots for conflict, as the depleted cinnabril is easy to mine and very close to the surface. Just be sure to wear your amulet at all times. Humanoids like to camp around these areas, waiting for the miners to stake a claim so they can be killed or robbed later. No cursed region means no red curse, right? Not in the way you think it would be. Instead, you can create the essence of cinnabar, which is a drug that changes the typical effects of cinnabar into something magical. Cinnabar and cinnabril are used in a lot of alchemical formulas, which makes them valuable. Essence of cinnabar gives you more magical powers when you drink it. The more you take, the more powers you begin to manifest. There is a cost, as there's always a cost in Mystara when you want more power. The cost is a permanent loss of constitution every time you drink it. You didn't think there wasn't going to be a downside to chugging a magical strawberry-flavored lead smoothie? You drink the essence, and then you roll on a chart to see what new power you manifest. You also have to be sporting increasingly large amounts of cinnabril to facilitate the change, meaning the higher the contamination you acquire, the more it's going to cost you. Your abilities grow in power the more levels of contamination you have. People born in areas where cinnabar is common start with 1 free level of contamination. Outsiders start with none. As you gain powers at 2 degrees of contamination, that means tourists have to sacrifice 2 points of constitution to get started compared to a native. There is no limit on the amount of contamination you can give yourself, until your con hits 0 and the party chops you up for spell components. The abilities you gain can be used once daily for 10 minutes unless otherwise stated. Some are permanent, like a stat increase. Other more powerful versions have more limits on their use. It's a case-by-case basis. If you roll the same ability twice, you can re-roll, or you can allow yourself an additional use per designated period. The con drain is permanent as you can expect. Even if you leave the cinnabar areas and your powers disappear, you don't get it back. A wish spell can restore a single point of constitution, but overuse of that method has made the spell all but unknown in the region. A few abilities also restore the lost point, but they're somewhat conditional. The first is counter drain. This not only makes you immune to level drain, but actually flips it back on the undead creature. If that kills it, there's a small chance you regain 1 point of con for every hit die you drain from the undead. Okay, that is one of the coolest abilities in D&D, and the fact that it only exists on this chart is not okay. The other ability that restores con is life sublimation, which lets you sacrifice life expectancy for health. I know that sounds contradictory, but Essence of Cinnabar has a habit of extending your lifespan. Humans can cash in 50 years of life expectancy to get a single point of constitution back. It doesn't age you, it just means you're going to die sooner. And don't laugh, elves, it costs you 550 years for your point. Everybody else is somewhere in the middle. There's a lot of other abilities that you can gain that are tied to cinnabril, either finding it, detecting it, attacking somebody else's source. You can even get Ultravision if you roll right. There's a name I haven't heard in a while. For those of you not familiar with this really obscure first edition power, Ultravision lets you see magical radiation, which was mostly used in the Underdark because that's where all the radiation was. This version is radically tweaked and probably more useful. Instead of being able to spot Radiance users from a mile away, now you can see 60 feet into the ethereal or astral plane when you activate it. Now here's the biggest rub. If you gain contamination powers, you are now stuck in the Savage Baronies. If you leave them, the cinnabar will continue to leach out of your system, and you will no longer be considered poisoned by it. This means Cinnabril is now toxic to you. As you need Cinnabril for your contamination powers, you can see the problem. Also, if you've extended your lifespan using the contamination powers, which is a common result on the charts, you don't want to lose your cinnabar poisoning. If you are now past your expected drop dead date, you turn into some really nasty forms of undead. There's a reason why troops hopped up on the essence of cinnabar haven't conquered the world. Their lifespan can be tracked with a calendar if they leave the Red Coast. It's fantastic to have on the home turf, but it becomes a death sentence when traveling abroad. So what happens to the other magical substances found in the Red Steel Sitting? Things like glass steel or smoke powder. Nothing is saying that those concoctions are excluded. You can make steel seed, another mineral found only in the area, meaning if you want guns, the only place you can find the materials to make gunpowder is here. Red steel loses its magical properties and becomes an expensive light alloy. It's nice, but it's not game-breaking. It does change the history of the region in ways no one has contemplated. Actually, let's talk about that next. What does the Red Coast look like if we merge Bruce Hurd's version with the Red Steel version? The curse is gone, but there's a rush going on as people try to find the new super steel that will be in demand in all corners of the known world. Time to put on the writer's hat and sort this one out. Until then, remember, better dead than red.